Week 5 is here in the NFL, and today on Sports Around the Bar, we're going to be talking about everything you need to be watching for this week, as well as who we think are going to walk away with victories in this pivotal week in the NFL season. So let's get started. Really quick, let's start with our 1 o'clock games and start with the Panthers and Falcons. This game, on paper, when you have an 0-4 team matching up with a team that's 2-2, it should be one that theoretically, the team 2-2 should come in heavily favored, but that's not the case now that the Panthers are on the road this week. This line actually starts out even. So while we're talking about this game, I want to talk about the Panthers and how they've kind of impressed me this season. I want to talk about how they've been, even though they're on the more conservative side of football, it's not flashy wins by any means. They've been doing enough to get the job done, and I think it's going to happen again this week against Atlanta, who defensively... Well, how do you pick Atlanta? I mean, they've blown multiple leads this year. They've struggled outside of passing the ball in pretty much every facet of the game. Running the ball has been tough with Todd Gurley at times. Defense has definitely been a struggle for this team. I think the Panthers are going to come in this one, and even though it's not going to be pretty and it's not going to be a blowout, I think the Panthers are going to win a tight one, 27-23 over the Falcons, who are going to struggle a little bit throwing the ball in this one. The Panthers' starting corners have been surprisingly good this year, with both Rasul Douglas as well as Dante Jackson being a thorn in the side of a lot of receivers. I expect that to continue, and while I don't think they'll shut Matt Ryan totally out, I do think that they'll provide enough resistance for Carolina to control clock and really pound the ball with a guy like Mike Davis, who's a quiet and kind of unsung running back who just gets the job done. Kind of has the same vibe as the rest of this team, where maybe they don't have the biggest names, maybe they're not flashy players, but they do enough to get wins. And I think after this week, we're going to be talking about a Carolina team that's sitting at 3-2, surprising a lot of us as for what they expected out of this team this year. As far as the Falcons go, the real question is going to be, can Dan Quinn hang on to his job after an 0-5 start? If they lose this game, and we're talking about the Falcons still being winless, do they pull the trigger? I'll still say no. I think Arthur Blank will wait at least to midseason, maybe about 8 games, or until they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs to truly get rid of his head coach. But the writing is on the wall already in Atlanta, and another interesting question that, again, hasn't been popping up a whole lot yet, but what do the Falcons do with Matt Ryan if they wind up with a top pick? While I do like Matt Ryan, I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, and obviously you look at his stats, the guy is a monster throwing the ball. Will they trade out of that pick, or will we see the Falcons reach and take a quarterback and start a new era and totally push the plunger down, moving on from Matt Ryan, or at the very least drafting his heir apparent, very much like Green Bay has done so with Aaron Rodgers? It'd be interesting to see. I think the Falcons have a lot of questions, even at 0-4. This team... It's still dangerous enough to win this game. There's too many holes for me to predict them to, and I think at the end of this week, we're going to see some very interesting questions kind of pop up for them as far as their coaching and draft status is what it's going to be like. Our second game, the Raiders are matching up with the Chiefs on the road. Hard to not go Chiefs here. The line in this one is 12 points for Kansas City. I think when we're talking about the Chiefs, they should have no problem. They've owned the Raiders and Derek Carr in the past year. I expect they're going to do the same thing here. Look for the Raiders to run the ball. I think the defense will be better than it's been in years past against the Chiefs, but this offense is just too loaded for me to pick against them. Kansas City, I think, is going to cruise on to a 5-0 start, while we're talking about the Raiders now dropping to 2-3 after a good start to the year for them. Derek Carr, again, still sort of playing for his job. I know there's a lot of speculation as to whether he'll be the quarterback after this year. I think this game could be instrumental if he can have a good showing in one of his 2 matchups against the Chiefs. It could be huge for him convincing this Raiders staff that he needs to stay the quarterback and they don't need to try to move on from him at the end of this year. If he struggles against the Chiefs twice, there's going to be some questions in the back rooms, in the boardrooms for the Raiders, where they're talking about, can this guy get it done against our division rival, especially one as good as the Chiefs, who now have Patrick Mahomes locked in on a decade-long contract. So if he can impress in this one, we might see Derek Carr wearing silver and black for longer. I think the real question is going to be, how does he look in this game more than it is, can the Raiders win this one? Next, even though it's not a sexy matchup on paper, the Cardinals go on the road to face the Jets in an important divisional game for them when we're talking about the 49ers and the Rams and the Seahawks all off to good starts this year. I think while we're talking about them, the Cardinals need this game, and they need to have a bounce-back performance, because after a hot start, they haven't looked as good in the past 2 games. I think this will be a good sort of indicator as to whether they can get their season back on track or whether they're still a year off from being a true contender in that NFC West. I think they get it done. I think the Jets have been just an absolute dumpster fire to this point. I think Adam Gase is another coach that on the hot seat needs to have a good game in this one. I think the Cardinals are going to be able to throw pretty much at will against a team like the Jets that have struggled on defense to this point. look for DeAndre Hopkins to have a good game. Look for a lot of their under wide receivers, guys like Andy Isabella and Christian Kirk. Look for them to be utilized and act in this game as well, as the Jets probably will be looking to slow the game down and try to control the ball. I think the Cardinals will be looking to put up a lot of points early and get out in front in this one. I think the Cardinals are going to do just that. I know it's, again, some of these matchups have been a little lopsided, hard to pick where these teams are at. I think the Cardinals get the job done, move on to 3-2, and then we see the Jets again down at the bottom at 0-5. As far as Sam Darnold goes, he's running out of time himself. Just like I talked about with both Matt Ryan and Derek Carr, he's got a lot to prove if he's going to stay the starting quarterback for the Jets. So this is an important game, and this is going to be a string of important games coming up for him, because at the very least, right now, it's looking like the Jets are going to have that top 5 pick. And with guys like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence likely to come out in this year's draft, it's going to be very, very difficult to sell a team like the Jets that have struggled under your sort of, with you under center, at least as a quarterback. It's going to be very difficult to convince them that you are still the guy going forward when they have that pick and to spend that pick on another position. So Sam Darnold's running out of time in New York to prove that he needs to stay the starting quarterback. As much as I like the guy, this is an important game for that. The Cardinals defense should still be susceptible enough for him to have at least decent numbers in this one. Staying with our 1 o'clock time block, we have the Eagles on the road against the Steelers in this one, and it's hard not to pick the Steelers. I know they're only a 7-point favorite. I expected that number to be a lot higher, but when we're talking about an undefeated team like Pittsburgh that defensively has just eaten teams alive this year, going up against Philadelphia with all those problems on the offensive line and Carson Wentz, who's having his worst season in the NFL to date, it's hard not to pick the Steelers. The line's at -7 right now for them. I thought it would be a lot higher. I thought this number would be closer to 10 with the way the Eagles have played. I will say this, don't count this Eagles team out. I think they still have some talent on here. I know their wide receiver position is banged up beyond recognition, but they still have a guy like Zach Ertz, and they still have Carson Wentz, who has the ability to light up other teams. Even though he's had a tough year this year, I still think he's a good quarterback. While I'm not picking him to win this game, I will say the Eagles might have a chance to surprise and maybe keep this one a little bit closer than people think. Or I would still take the Steelers even with that 7 points. I think while we're talking about how good of a team the Steelers group actually is, while they may not go and drop 45 points on the Eagles, I think they'll drop 30, maybe 28, and then maybe keep the Eagles to 10 or less. So I expect this game will probably be all Steelers. Maybe they pull out in the second half. I'm not beyond saying the Eagles have a chance in this one, but it's just really hard for me to pick them when I look at the way this team has started. I expect the Eagles to lose this one, fall to 1-3-1, but still be in that NFC playoff race just because of how soft the rest of the division has been as well. Rams at Redskins, or at least what used to be the Redskins and is now the Washington football team. Again, another lopsided affair with the Rams coming in as a 7-point favorite, even on the road. Look for the Rams to take the lead early in this one with that creative offense they run. The question will be, do they take their foot off the gas? And what does Kyle Allen look like for Washington? The Rams defense has surprised a little bit this year. This was one of the teams that I kind of predicted to fall off a little bit in the offseason. They've kind of powered through, and even without a guy like Todd Gurley, they've been a very effective football team, both running and passing the ball. I think the Rams score early, score often, maybe take their foot off the gas, and we see some flash out of Kyle Allen. But I don't expect Washington to hang in this one very often. I expect the Redskins will go, or the football team will go down to 1-4, and the Rams 4-1 in this sort of lopsided matchup in the NFL in Week 5. Next, speaking of lopsided matchups, we have the Bengals on the road to face the Ravens. I know it's a divisional game, but 13 points at home. Baltimore is the biggest favorite on the slate this week, and they are for a reason. I'd still take Baltimore in this one, and as much as Joe Burrow has impressed, as much as I've liked the Bengals and how tough this team has come out this year and battled in a lot of these games, I just can't pick them here. I think the Ravens are going to come out and just maul this Bengals team that's not going to be able to stop the running attack that Baltimore has. Look for Lamar Jackson to have a big day here as well, as I just don't think this defense is up to snuff and athletic enough to kind of take him out of the game. I think the Bengals struggle in this one. This gets out of hand early, and it doesn't get any better towards the end. Joe Burrow has impressed all the way to this point in the season, and I can say he seems like he was worth that first overall pick. It's just too early for a team like Cincinnati to go out toe-to-toe with a team that's already complete like the Ravens and expect to walk away with a win in this one. Look for this one to get ugly and stay that way all the way through. Our last 1 o'clock game, we have the Jaguars going up against the Texans. A battle at the bottom of the AFC South at this point. 0-4 start, now without their head coach, Bill O'Brien. I think the Texans come out in this one and make a statement with new head coach Romeo Crennel that even though he hasn't been the best coach and his record has not been very good, this team still has enough talent that they should be able to beat a team like Jacksonville. I think Minshew will still be able to throw in this game. I think this might actually even turn out into a shootout. And I know Houston has that 5.5-point favorite line out here, but I expect this game might actually stay close, and Jacksonville will be able to throw on this depleted Houston secondary. The problem is, I don't see Jacksonville with their one-team sack at this point being able to stop a team like Houston without getting after a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. So expect that to stay competitive all the way through. I think Jacksonville will run the ball decently well with their new running back Robinson, and I expect Gardner Minshew will put up good stats throwing. I just don't count on their defense stopping them, and I think when it comes down to it, when we get to the fourth quarter, and this game's been interesting all the way through, Deshaun Watson will have what it takes against a particularly weak defense to pull out a win in the end game. I think this one stays high scoring. I'm going to say 38-36. Houston walks away with the win here, but Jacksonville covers in this one. Moving on to 4 o'clock, the Dolphins match up with the 49ers, and they've been somewhat stout in the past couple games as well. The Dolphins, since beating Jacksonville on Thursday night in Week 3, haven't looked that bad. They hung with Seattle for a lot of that game, a team many people consider to be considerably better than the Dolphins are. I expect they'll come out and do the same thing against the 49ers and a backup like Nick Mullins, who at times struggled a little bit last week. I think the Dolphins, while they do lose this game, probably hang around for a while. Eventually, I think the 49ers cover that 9-point favorite that they are, but maybe this isn't quite as a throwaway game as it looks to be on paper when we're talking about a 1-3 team like the Dolphins and the former Super Bowl team in the 49ers. I think the 49ers will pull this one out. They'll be able to run. Raheem Mostert is expected to return, as well as Jerick McKinnon running the ball. They're looking to have a much healthier roster outside of their quarterback. So while we're talking about the 49ers, this should be business as usual, and I'd like to see them blow out the Dolphins to make them feel a little bit better about how they've played, but still at 2-2 without their starting quarterback. This team's played very well. Still 100% in the playoff conversation. I think people are saying that some people that have said this isn't the same team need to relax and remember that not many teams survive losing their starting quarterback. The 49ers are doing just that and winning games, even if it's not against the best opponents. I think they win this one. I'll even say they cover the 9 points, but maybe, just maybe, the Dolphins hang in for a little while like they did against Seattle. After that, at 4:25, we have the Colts going on the road to face the Browns, and this is another matchup that is actually even when it's a pick'em when it comes to betting. So talking about this game, I think the Colts maybe should be getting a little bit more respect than they are, having the number 1 defense. They're number 1 in scoring, which is the most important stat when it comes to defense, more important than yardage is. I think the Browns, despite having a lot of success against a weak defense like the Cowboys, are going to struggle a lot more to run the ball in this one. I think the Browns lose this one, and I think they lose it somewhat handily. I'm going to say Indy wins this one 32-24. Cleveland will still do some things. They'll score some points. Maybe Indy has a little bit more trouble with them than they have against some of these other teams that they've played. But I just don't see this Cleveland defense slowing down a running attack that has just dominated a lot of teams. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be in for a big day for Indianapolis. I think that offensive line is going to have their way with Cleveland's defensive line. And really, this comes down to can Cleveland win in the trenches. I think they'll establish themselves decently well on offense. Defensively, though, outside of Myles Garrett, I really see this team struggling up against an Indianapolis line that is still one of the best in football. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, even though Kirk Cousins tends to struggle in these big situations, and the Seahawks are a heavy 7-point favorite in this one at home against the Vikings, I expect, and I'm willing to pick the underdog in this one, and I think the Vikings, desperate at 1-3, are going to come out guns blazing and find a way to steal a win against a better team in Seattle that's sitting at 4-0. I think backs against the wall, we're going to see Dalvin Cook run wild in this one. I think Kirk Cousins was due for a decent game, even though he struggled at times this year. I think this game, while as much as last week I didn't want to say the Vikings were out of it, falling to 1-4 with the Bears running away at 4-1 and the Packers also undefeated as well, this is a game that is absolutely a must-win for the Vikings. I think they come out hungrier than the Seahawks do, and I think they're going to pull out a sneaky win all the way up in Seattle without the 12th man. As far as Seattle goes, they're cruising. The Rams are on their heels in the division, but this team has looked great. A little bit of a scare last week against the Dolphins, but they managed to get the job done. They led pretty much all the way through. I think if they come into this one with their guard down as well, the Vikings, even at 1-3, could steal this one away from them much easier than a team like the Dolphins could. I expect this one will stay close, and I think the Vikings do just enough to hold the Seahawks off on a last-minute drive to win this game. I'm going to take the Vikings in this one. As much as I like Russell Wilson, I just think the Seahawks team is due for a kind of a setback, and I think this is the game where it happens. Rolling over to Monday night, we actually have 2 games this week because of NFL schedule changes. Let's start first with the Broncos and Patriots that play at 5 o'clock. There's got to be the Patriots, right? I like the Broncos going into the season, but this team has been ravaged by injuries, torn apart, losing guys like Jarrell Casey and Von Miller on that defensive line. Look for the Patriots' run-heavy attack, regardless of who plays quarterback. And right now it's looking like it's going to be Jarrett Stidham. Look for that run-heavy attack to do enough damage to win this game. This won't be pretty. I don't think any of these Patriot games are going to be pretty from this point on. I think we're going to see a lot of heavy defense, a lot of low-scoring games, a lot of close matchups where every point matters. I think the Patriots are built to win that type of game, and while the Broncos might have been at the beginning of the season, I don't see them now with this rotating sort of carousel they've had at quarterback, as well as their defense being just absolutely lit up with injury. Look for the Broncos to lose this one, even though this game doesn't have a line because of the shift, or at least I couldn't find one. I think the Patriots win this one in what might be an ugly game, but a comfortable win for them as well. I think this one probably winds up somewhere around 22 to 13, Patriots winning this one. After that, later in the evening, we have the Chargers going on the road to face the Saints. Justin Herbert's impressed, and this is the biggest surprise. I knew Joe Burrow was going to be a good prospect, even though I thought he might struggle a little bit more than he has so far in Cincinnati. I wasn't as sure about Justin Herbert, but he has been great on this Chargers team. I think he'll continue that against the Saints. But this defense should be able to defeat a rookie quarterback. I'm going to pick the Saints in this one as well. At 2-2, even though this division is wide open when you talk about the Falcons falling off and the Buccaneers losing last night on Thursday Night Football, the Panthers also being 2-2, I think the Saints are going to be motivated to win this game, to reestablish themselves on top, and I think the Chargers just don't quite have what it takes to beat a complete roster like the Saints are. There have been questions about Drew Brees. Those questions will continue. Maybe this defense can do enough to kind of unsettle him and kind of attack the short pass he's had to rely on. Again, we're talking about a career veteran, future Hall of Famer in Drew Brees matching up against a rookie in what would be his third game, I believe. Might be fourth. Don't quote me on that. What is one of Justin Herbert's first starts? I think the Saints win this one, and I think it's going to be, well, closer than maybe it should be when we're talking about the Saints versus a rookie quarterback. I still think it's comfortable enough. I'll take the Saints by 5 in this one, not quite getting to that 7.5-point line that's set. Finally, Tuesday Night Football. The Bills go on the road to face the Titans, perhaps. Let me be the first to say, if this game happens, the Bills are going to win it. The Titans are likely to be down about 12 to 15 players. They haven't been practicing for almost 2 weeks now. This facility and all the controversy swirling around them, I think the Titans are going to be set up to going up against one of the best teams in football that has been Buffalo for these first 4 games, are being set up for a loss. Anytime you have to match up with a team without being able to prepare for them in the same way that the Titans have been kind of locked out of their facilities, it's going to be difficult. And Buffalo has been absolutely amazing. I think this one turns into a drubbing. The Titans' defense has already struggled this year. They haven't looked good through 3 games. They've made a couple big plays when they've needed to, but as far as yardage goes and as far as teams like Jacksonville and Minnesota being able to move the ball at will, this team has struggled. Buffalo should have no problem scoring. Whether it's on the ground, whether it's through the air, I expect the Bills to put up a lot of points. And I just don't see Tennessee matching with many of their receivers out with COVID or injured. A.J. Brown is still questionable as to whether he'll actually make an appearance. I don't think they will, especially coming back off of this one. I don't think they play him. I think they just throw their hands up and say, there's not much we're going to be able to do in this game. I think the Titans lose a big one if this game actually happens. I, for one, am hoping it's postponed. Again, I don't think it's fair to the Titans that the facility may not open until Saturday or Sunday, and then to force them to play as good of a team as Buffalo is on a short week like that without being able to prepare. If it happens, look for Buffalo to run away in this one and the Titans to fall. Hey, thanks for watching. If you agree with what you saw, make sure you hit the like button down below in this video. It helps me out immensely when it comes to the YouTube algorithm. If you didn't agree with me, that's okay too. We're here to talk sports and we're here to disagree on things. It's what makes it fun. Throw a comment down below. Let me know what you disagree with. Let me know your thoughts on the matter. And if you haven't yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button right here so we can talk sports every day.